I really appreciate the play with time. I think, there's this nod to just plain time, and I kind of feel like in a world, in a life where like there's always a demand. There's always like the next thing to do, the next day to think about, the next appointment you have, the next election coming up. And I think poetry can be a way to occupy time in and not even necessarily a productive way, just in a joyful way. And I like that the poem enacts. I like that the poem demands we enjoy the time we have with it, just by existing.
Thank you. I'm going to play Bernadette performing the poem. Okay, here's Bernadette.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Moon out and no snow yet, November 1st, the first anniversary of our wedding and the day before Election Day, 1976. Yesterday was Halloween. Next Friday I have an appointment with the dentist, and the following Tuesday is Louis's 32nd birthday. Exactly 1 week after that, Marie will be 11 months old. The day before yesterday we turned the clocks back 1 hour, which made it seem like every day will have an extra hour in it, not only of darkness but of just plain time. The time I used to spend skipping lunch is longer. The time for dinner is too early now. The time for sunset comes too soon. The time between dinner and Marie's bedtime is too long. When it's time to go to bed, there's still a few hours left to read. I'm dreaming twice as much as before. I spend all my new time lying in bed thinking. Last night I saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and tonight when I came into my room to go to work, I found an old seed pod on the floor by my desk. In the movie, if you see one of these, it's time to die. It's time to write some letters. Good cold air comes in my window. It wakes me up. We had a bottle of champagne, and Marie went to sleep without crying. It's time to read Fielding's Guide to European Travel and the Alice Toklas Cookbook again. A few books by John McPhee, our new American Heritage Anniversary Dictionary, The Adventures of a Mathematician by Stanislav Ulam, and The Wild Boy of Averoigne by a behaviorist psychologist about a boy brought up by wolves.
Okay, so before we turn to Dan first, I want to ask Lainey and Sophia to keep an eye on the comment stream in YouTube. Okay, Sophia, what do we got?
So we have some people chiming in about time in this poem. Laura Littman said, it makes me think of the way that parents, mostly women, keep the whole of the family calendar in their heads, all things large and small.
Cool. Lainey?
Miranda Jubb says, right now it is making me think of having to keep multiple schedules and appointments of family members in one's head at all times.
Fantastic. Dan Bergman, your thoughts on this poem?
Dan says she loves to give herself permission to associate and ends up with an impossible list of books to read, which reminds me of what it's like to study with Jason.
What a perfect setup for Jason. Thank you, Dan. Jason, you want to follow up on that, and then we'll turn to Dave Poplar.
Dan, I've got like 28 more to read by next week if you want to take a challenge. This poem, like, because I have Hard Times by Ashbery in the brain, I'm thinking about them in juxtaposition, and the kind of ominousness of Hard Times would seem quite different from this poem, but to me they, like, on one end and the other end are kind of a spectrum of if we figured out a place for Barbara Guest, a spectrum of the New York School. But like what also strikes me at the end, the last three books are the dictionary, The Adventures of a Mathematician, and The Wild Boy of Averoigne, which I believe was made into a movie by Francois Truffaut. And it's about a boy, because he's raised by wolves, is taken in, and never can learn language. He's without language. So we have these words that turn into numbers, that turn into kind of cries, beyond language or before language, which is also reminds me of the last scene of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because the difference between the pod people and our beloved heroes is that the pod people ends with Donald Sutherland pointing at someone and making this horrible non-language sound.
Yeah.
So in the dailiness of the Mayor poem, there's also this strange undertow of a threat of a kind of loss or collapse of language.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great. Appreciate that. Okay, Dave Poplar, your thought briefly on this poem?
I love poems about the crushing weight of suburban family life, like in Dance Ruse and things like that. And I think this really captures it. But I also think that it's amazingly hopeful. Right when the seed pod part comes in, it seems to me like a turn. I saw it, and when you see one of these, it's time to die. And then the poem talks about it's time to live, it's flourishing. So it seems like it begins with this crushing weight of just quotidian life and ends with the ability to flourish among that. So it's really hopeful to me.
Gabby, can you say anything about why it's relevant that this was 1976?
Oh, I was thinking about Jason mentions the Donald Sutherland version, which, by the way,
Which is the 70s version, yeah.
But it did come out in 78, and so she's probably watching the 50s version, which is like
Definitely.
first more boring, but it's a lot heavier handed in a kind of anti-communist allegory.
Yeah,
like
the pod people are commies that are going to take over our minds, brainwashing.
Yeah, like if the 70s one is kind of like kind of anti-conformity or watching people all become kind of this one sort of nonverbal hive mind, like the 50s one is like, oh, all your neighbors are being transformed by an evil source. So it's this very Cold War politics movie. And so the poem says 76 and it's facing that election. So I'm curious, I imagine that that's where we're going. And, you know, Bernadette Mayer was a communist poet and thought a lot about these kinds of issues. So there's a paranoia to that one that I think is relevant.
Yeah, totally.